The United Nations climate talks are a complete sensory overload for when you arrive, often jet lagged as you do from Australia, and it's a first for me since Copenhagen, so much to get back up to speed on. It's astonishing in its audacity and terrifying in the number of threats of these climate talks. 190 nations, so many different agendas and interests at play, and ghouls and obstacles that lurk around the corner for those that want to in some way hinder progress. Here in Warsaw, the talks are hosted at the National Football Stadium, and so there's been plenty of metaphors that run with that, of course, and really I'm going to go with one. After the first week of the 2 weeks we've had that, we're in half time right now, and there's plenty of bruised and battered bodies lying about the place, and early optimism that we'd gone into these talks with, optimism based on the fact that we'd made good progress in streamlining the nature of these talks at the last convention in Doha, and optimism based on the fact that a number of nations are actually lifting their game and lifting their local strategies, and in particular the US and China. That optimism has met, however, some big blows, a number of them coming from Australia, particularly its simultaneous legislation to repeal the carbon laws that price and limit carbon pollution, and a number of the comments that have been made both back at home as well as here at the talks haven't been helpful at all, and have sowed deep suspicion and distrust about Australia's position, which it needs to clean up on and clear the air on if it's to be a serious player towards our national interest in avoiding 2 degrees, a serious player in these negotiations. Otherwise it risks being sidelined whilst others get on with the serious work, and that may have risks for our ability to work to best align our national interest towards both cleaning up our economy but also helping achieve a deal that makes a difference. Now, there are a couple of key areas in which Australia has had big question marks over it. Its targets and conditions. It's before the election and just afterwards, the government had repeated its support for up to 25%, and that the conditions wouldn't change is one of those key issues. And the Prime Minister, when announcing the repeal legislation and taking some questions, really appeared to shift the rules, shift the conditions into ones which basically meant that we would just have the 5% at the minimum end of the range, and couldn't possibly achieve the up to 25%, which is a credible reduction of 2000 levels by 2020, a credible effort towards avoiding 2 degrees. Now, the Environment Minister since then has said the targets and the conditions still stay, so we need that to be clarified, in particular by the Prime Minister, but particularly also here at these talks. There are question marks over our commitment to what's called climate financing, a crucial part of the global climate architecture, the basic part of the agreement which is bringing together countries, that there is some responsibility for those developed countries to provide public financing for developing countries, and these don't include China and India amongst them, for example, but it's for the poorer developing countries to help them clean up their development pathways, but also their preparation for climate impacts. Australia's done and said a few things which has earned it the ire of many of those developing countries and of non-government organisations, because it appears to be challenging some of the key elements of the climate architecture with what it said. So the next week will be very interesting and important as to how they clarify some of those things. And finally, on an issue that's called loss and damage in the UN lingo here, it's a key area where the countries have agreed to address the the most vulnerable countries of developing countries, how their actual loss and damage from the actual climate impacts can be addressed from a climate change that, of course, that those countries have contributed so little towards. So it's Typhoon Haiyan and the Philippines tragedies have really brought this into focus as an important aspect here, and we're seeing this made as a red line issue for progress by countries such as China. And in this, Australia has made some very strange and preemptive comments which are being interpreted as playing foul in that process. And so again, they need to come clean on that area as well. So look, plenty of interest. I'll be blogging at least in the written form, if not in this video form, every day. But we'll hope to keep you in touch with that from Warsaw, from the stadium, and we'll get back into talks tomorrow, our time.